Welcome to the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach. Join me as we explore the dynamic intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. From the challenges to the triumphs, we're here to unravel it all. Get ready for insightful conversations, practical wisdom, and a whole lot of inspiration. Let's embark on this empowering journey together. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host Esther, and today I'm joined by Tendai, who's with us today and going to be sharing quite a lot about her experience in her life. Tendai, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Esther. Looking forward to the chat. So my name is Tendai Rukarwa. I was born in Zimbabwe, raised there, and then moved to the UK in adulthood. Professionally, I trained as a chartered accountant, and I'm registered in Zimbabwe, in England, and Wales. I'm a mother, two lovely little boys. One is 7, and the other one is, almost turning 3.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I'd love to read. I always say I'm a very colorful nerd. I've got the glasses going, but everything else, I think I'm a mixture between an extrovert and an introvert. I do love to take time to spend time with people, but I need to retreat every now and again just to take time to myself. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting, and you've got interesting age gaps there with the kids. So there's a lot going on, but I'm a bit similar to you as well. And it's like, how do you manage? Because there's two very different needs, isn't it?
I think that uniqueness is, I needed to be very conscious about it, because I think when I had this in my head, that they would just come together and play together, hand me down everything. I mean, like, you've got the same gender already. But I had to actually realize it's very much a conscious effort to realize they're different personalities.
Mm.
One is extroverted, the other one's very introverted. And I actually need to make sure I push the older brother is the one who's introverted. So I need to actually push for time for him to be at the center, whereas the little one just takes up all the space and having to reel him back. But yeah, it's almost that it's not a one size fits all. You really have to look at each child individually and address them and their needs individually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you've mentioned about looking at the child individually. We're going to come to obviously your career moving and everything, but I love talking about kids as well, because it's important. You know, if we have them, it's giving them the best support, I suppose, to take them forward in their lives. And a lot of the times I hear people saying, oh, this one did this, or they slept well and this one doesn't. And it's almost like trying to put them in a little box, isn't it? Just to make them one. And how have you found with obviously your time, how do you sort of work it out to make sure that you're supporting both of them?
I think one of the greatest lessons that I had to learn was there was a 22-year-old Tendai, and there's a Tendai now. That there are some things that you need to drop and some things you need to pick up. Because I think at one point I tried to maintain everything I did, the social life, the friends, all the roles I could pick up and still be the mom. And it burnt me out. And I think I can't remember who told me this, that the idea is not to juggle all the balls. It's to realize you've got some plastic balls and some glass balls. Sometimes you've got to let the plastic balls fall and try and at least keep hold of the glass ones. And then you might pick up the plastic ones later. So I literally had to do like a time audit. In a sense, I think I was once told it's called, where you look at what can I take up now? What can I defer for later? I am still very much in school run ages. I need to be there to drop them off by the classroom, pick them up from the classroom. So there's certain things I can't do. You can't set up a meeting for me at 3.
No.
So it's permanently blocked in my calendar. I make it a point to make it known that I'm a mom, so that people can know and accommodate some of the things that comes with that role. It also helps when I sort of put it in the forefront, because there are times I think there's a role I once took up and I didn't want to mention I was a mom, and I was fighting for my life in the background and trying to show up professionally. But there are certain things and times that don't work for me at this time and this season, which I can later take up. But it's almost that sort of honest assessment of really seeing what can you pick up now, what can you wait for later, how else can you work around a certain thing. I'm part of a group called Women in Enterprise in Milton Keynes. That's predominantly, yeah, I guess the name women, but
Yeah.
a lot of us are moms. And the beauty of it, all our programs happen between 10 and 3
Yeah.
because they're conscious of that. So also aligning myself in spaces where I can still shine and show up, but it also encompasses that role of being a mom. So I don't get burnt out trying to just keep the candle lit at both ends. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really important that you've actually mentioned that, because I feel like sometimes with certain, not even a feeling, it's more from talking to other mums who are trying to do things, that people end up not showing up authentically because they are worried that they're gonna lose a contract or miss an opportunity because they've mentioned they're a mum. Whereas I think, personally, when I look at it, I'd rather know that somebody's a mom and they can't work at certain times, because then you're realistic with what you're asking for from somebody, isn't it? It's kind of like open. Yes.
Yes, that is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one there. So taking us back then, obviously we've spoken a little bit about the kids and how you're sort of managing to juggle those areas with everything else you're doing. When you did the move, you've moved from Zimbabwe, and you've obviously changed roles in terms of I don't know if the legislations or certain things are the same, or you've had to really completely kind of change track and direction in what you do. How's that move been for you?
Oh my goodness, that one is a very pivotal transition in the story of my life. So I think I always laugh and say sometimes it's very hard when you tell a story when you don't have a poor or sad beginning.
Yeah.
My upbringing in Zimbabwe was, I think it to say we weren't rich, we weren't poor, we were just at a point where we had enough.
Yeah.
And I felt like academically I excelled. So I passed all my exams first time. I felt like I was seen in the firm. I was working at Ernst and Young. People knew my name. I felt like if there was a yearbook, you'd be like, no, promising student. And then I made the transition to move to the UK. I think I had not prepared for the shift in that status and dynamic. So all of a sudden, I found myself in places where people doubted my abilities,
Mm.
where I was starting at a much lower place and I needed to prove myself. And in some instances, even when I thought, I think I must have shown up now, I still didn't feel like I got that recognition.
Yeah.
So I even went on a series of job hopping because I think I was looking for that feeling of, I think I should, it's not the place, maybe I'll find a place where I made it. But in between there, I lost a large chunk of who Tendai was.
Yeah.
So I slowly began to withdraw because I felt like, no, I'm not seen anyway.
Mm.
So even when you're showing up like that, your work tanks as well. You're not really showing up with the best of your abilities. Health wise, I had breakouts. I was struggling with sleep in so many aspects. But it was that transition which was not managed because even some of the language, the British are very polite. So you'd be thinking it's a suggestion, and then it was an instruction. And you come to a point at a performance meeting, and it's, I told her like this, and she didn't do it. And I was like, no, you said I could consider, but it was the indirect language I had to pick up and learn. Um, and even just so I felt as if my story was going on a high trajectory and at some point hit the UK and I was going down. I felt even ashamed to really show up. I'm sure at some point some of my colleagues must have thought something happened to me. So I didn't want to show up personally. I didn't want to show up professionally. I literally went into a hiding, just mere survival, paycheck, get my paycheck, live my little life, and just hide in a corner. And I think there's a day when one of my I would say because we had a system where you'd have juniors and seniors.
Yeah.
So one of the juniors from Ernst & Young, very lovely young lady, she got a job, what I thought would be a dream job at one of the companies we used to audit. I remember actually taking a day off, and I was in a depressive state. And I remember my father called me, and then he's just like, what? And I was like, I think I just ruined my life when I made the move here. I just ruined my career. Like, I'm just floating along until I don't know where I get to.
Yeah.
And then he actually reminded me that, do you remember you used to tell me about how you'd be going for a board meeting, getting into a big car where you almost need a step to jump in, and you'd be wearing your lovely clothes and you'd be showing up in there. And I was like, yeah, but that was when I thought maybe if I was in Zimbabwe, I would have risen through the ranks of some company.
Yeah.
But it's like, so are you packing your bags and coming to Zimbabwe to do that, or are you just going to do that there? It seemed harsh because I was like, hey, we were supposed to be having a pity party here. But I think he awoke something in me that, okay, so if that's the case, pack your bags and go and try and do that there, or you might as well do it here where you are. And I think at that moment, I started to stop to see myself as a victim and try and just make it work where I am. So my dressing changed. I'm sure you can see I love color. Even when I show up for places, I love to have a pop of color. I started to even change my dress choice, even asking at work if there are opportunities I could take up. And the surprising thing was they were always there. I just never asked for some of these. Yeah. Given that you can have circumstances where you are overlooked for other factors. But when I actually stepped forward, I was given a secondment opportunity. There was a team of us, a team of auditors. I had the least tenure, but I put myself forward and applied, and I got the role to fill in for my boss when he had to go for a long-term absence. As I'm speaking to you now, I sit on the board for the University of Northampton.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But it took my father having to shake me and remind me that sometimes a seed is scattered wherever it's scattered. It just needs to bloom where it lands. Um, the journey I feel is still ongoing,
Yeah.
but I think that transition, it knocked me down a bit in my confidence, professionally and personally.
Yeah.
But when I got reminded of the power that was within me, so I didn't necessarily get any special education added. It was just the awakening
Yeah.
of that was inside and the reminder, which I think I would be an advocate for. Speak aloud your goals sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it took my dad saying to me, do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that for those that are religious, I think there's actually a verse that says even write them down
Yeah.
so that you can refer to it. Because I think without that, I probably would have just been dragging my spirit and just going through life, believing there's nothing for me. And even when you're in such a state, even when someone else has something good that happens to them, for some reason you take it personally and be like, woe is me. But it's given me space to appreciate others, given me the confidence to even show up. And even I find myself even commenting on people's posts, well done, because I've got that joy within me.
Yeah.
It's easy to spread it even to others. So yeah, I think that's that transition. It was, yeah, a season in my life that I refer to it now and I love. And I am keen to speak to people who come through from different jurisdictions to just say, this might be something you might feel, but may I be an example for you
Yeah.
of the other side of it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And to be honest, it's, there's quite a few things that you've mentioned in there that are sort of close to my heart as well. And I've seen it over the years when you're helping and supporting other people. It's almost like I think there's an element of fear.
Yes.
Secondly, it's almost like you block yourself because you feel the fear and everything else makes you feel like, oh, I'm not good enough. Yeah. And then you then add the not putting yourself forward to things. And it almost seems like you're just not getting it, but you haven't actually tried. You haven't actually asked because you've shut it down. You've shut that idea down. What sort of advice would you have for somebody else who is feeling like that?
Yeah. I think mentorship is something people don't often talk about, but it's quite key because there are times when, yeah, taking this first step can really feel daunting.
Yeah.
And not all of us are just like, go getters. But sometimes a mentor can help you process your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had it was an informal mentor, actually. We didn't actually sit and think we're going to have mentorship. But I remember I was working in Jersey Channel Islands, and one of the ladies, she was a director. So we'd have coffee. Just let's go ahead and have coffee. And when she was telling me some of the things she had to overcome, it made it quite possible, and it showed me an actual representation of someone actually doing it. There's one thing in theory when you read about all these people who've done stuff, but it's like this is a person like me doing the same stuff as me, and there she was. So there's that person where you can help and be like, what do you think I should do? How do you think I should process this? That helps. And then secondly, there are some environments that really work well with certain personalities and some that don't. There are places where it's cutthroat. You need to be that go-getter. You're not easily moved, and everything is so fast-paced. There's environments that work better for people who prefer that. And then there's some people who need spaces that allow them to slowly process and go through things. I would actually say, if, like I said, I trained as a chartered accountant. One naturally would think I deal with numbers every day. But I sometimes refer to myself as the accountant that's not so keen on the numbers. The sense that there were things I was able to do professionally because I trained in them, but it took so much out of me to have financial statements prepared. I would literally be at the end of my rope at an audit season. Whereas they said when I would do something risk related, I
Yeah.
was a lot more relaxed. I had more points. So it's not that I was defective when I was in that other environment. It's I just functioned better. So sometimes you might have to pivot
Yeah.
and just redirect, and not because I think we take on so much personally to say, I think this is not the place. Sometimes it's just not the environment that works best for
Yeah.
you and your skills and your talents. We don't necessarily bleed everywhere when we have a wound.
No.
So you still be selective with who you share with. But if you can find safe spaces, sometimes people read the books. I know that the books like, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. Those like it's that book that gives you the edge and the punch. But I feel the interpersonal relationships for me work better. And even sometimes when you're able to put yourself out there, I even went to one of my bosses and I said, this is my goal. This is where I would want to be.
Mm.
What would you suggest I take up? And they were like, oh, do you know what? There's actually such and such happening. So sometimes when you put yourself forward, it's not necessarily in the sense of, I want to take this up. It's just to say, I just want to alert you that this is where my mind is at. Should anything come through,
Yeah.
please do consider me. And trust me, it works wonders. It's as if the universe opens up for you and finds
Yeah.
things. But it's that piece where the first step is from you to walk towards it in whatever way that feels comfortable, whether it's an accountability piece,
Mhm.
whether it's a case of find tools, if it's education, you want to change into something. Did I tell you I once studied to do tax and I failed dismally? What I remember when I came through and everyone kept telling me, oh, you're an accountant, you need to do taxes for people. And I thought, that's money coming my way. But you know what? I passed taxes in my studies, but I hated taxes.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? Everyone's saying it. And then I went for it. I just really didn't do well in the exams. But it was also because I literally was talking to anyone and everyone. Some people had no business knowing what my career choices were because they didn't know the space I operated in.
Yeah.
But it's only when I now went, like I said, the bleeding everywhere when you have a wound. You need to be very careful of that because you get the online doctors, go to the actual GP, the surgery person who's trained in that area, who can give you targeted advice and just say, you know what, uh, this in this space, you could consider this, you might change into that. It does help to have those targeted individuals should you need to speak and yeah, lean into your strengths and what works for you. So now I'm in an organization now where it's a not-for-profit for social good. So it works for me because I've got that purpose side of things and I've got a challenging role. I see myself progressing and growing, and they are fully supportive of me being a mom. This afternoon, I'm going to go to my child's nativity play. I just block it in my calendar. I found a place where they trust me to be able to deliver and still take care of other things in
Yeah.
the home. So, but it's because of that environment. There were some environments where I felt afraid to leave my desk for lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you're in that space that allows you to be you and you are vulnerable enough to seek help. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it's a two-way thing, really, isn't it? It's almost like you've got to have that self-awareness. You've got to know what you're not so good at. And I think sometimes if you don't really have that self-awareness, you take it too hard on yourself, but you don't really analyze the things that are potentially just wasting your time.
Yeah.
And you don't enjoy them, which is another terrible thing because you're not really going to be excited to get out of bed in the morning to go and do something you don't
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it, you've made it sound and look like it's okay to pivot and change. There's nothing wrong with that. You've trained in
Yeah.
this, but your passion is in that, and you followed that dream. And that's like
Yeah.
powerful things that I think everybody needs to have, and just not feeling that you can't really progress or go anywhere else because you've got to stick with one thing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I think our upbringing sometimes comes to play. Like I said, I was raised in Zimbabwe. There were a list of professions that were where it made sense.
Yeah,
Doctor, lawyer, accountant, and the rest is like it's in the event of everything else failing, then consider those other things. So I just whilst I was academically a strong person, I think at some point I really didn't have that individualism to choose.
yeah,
It's a good thing I got into something and I did it well and I was able to pivot that. But it's something I now take up as a mom to allow my kids space to name their profession and not me coming with a prescriptive list. Because I think part of what makes us feel like we can't shift is I'd already picked this up and everyone was so proud of me. Can you imagine what they would have to deal with should I shift from that? Because it's like Sunday morning chat, when people are like, oh, Tendai, the one who's in the UK, the accountant,
oh yeah,
you know. So now thinking they want to have to shift to, she's just out there finding her way in her 30s, and everyone's like, but it's because we were in environments that told us, we had, cookie cutter professions
yeah,
that we had to take up. And I'm glad that we get to travel and see, and the world is a lot more expansive, that we now see, oh, there's different professions, different
yeah,
ways people can actually make a living.
yeah,
And hopefully we channel that for our kids as well to say, it's okay
yeah,
not to necessarily have made up your mind. It's okay to say I'm bridging whilst I'm waiting for XYZ, so that we just allow them to thrive. Yeah.
yeah. And it's hard because you're expected to know what you want to be when you're still fairly young, and that's quite a hard one. I remember one lady actually said that she chose to be. It's either you were one of these prescripted professions or you were an embarrassment. That's how she put it, and it's really interesting that it's like, okay, so I went down the embarrassment route, but I'm surviving and thriving, and I've made it. And it's not great, but that's kind of like another mind shift, I think, that needs to happen. And if we do it for our children, it kind of allows them to flourish, I suppose, and equip them with that state of, okay, I can make my mind up, I can make a decision. But it's also giving, you guide them, you give them the questions and everything. Which brings me to my next bit, because you like working with young people. Tell us a little bit about how you like to obviously help them with sort of their financial literacy skills and just shaping them really for the future.
Part of that process where I mentioned where my dad told me to thrive where I was, it reminded me as well of a dream I had some time ago, which I just shelved. And I will thank again a charity called Worktree that I partner with a lot, where I end up going into schools and meeting young people and just telling them about employment skills. And I think it also made me aware of the gap that exists sometimes where people start off learning some subjects at a very elementary level, and then all of a sudden you're shot up into the working world full of acronyms and all these big words, and you're supposed to know all these things, and that there's a gap in between that we need to bridge up for young people, sort of that works them up to the level where they're now in an employment state. So starting off with some basic things about etiquette even, because you find even in interviews where good grades, but you've got an individual who just can barely sit or string a decent conversation. So there was also those things about just how to find themselves in a professional setting, how to conduct themselves, all age appropriate as well. So it's the employment skills. And another gap is just exposing them to the various occupations that are there. And like we were saying, we want to have them have an expansive mind. So I love that when I show up and then I'm like, would you know what an auditor is? And someone goes like, it's like an Inspector Gadget, and I'm like, yeah, something like that. But it's bringing that big world to a bite-sized chunk for them. And because I trained in the field of accountancy, I actually mainly specialize in that one, where I try and make the accountancy something they encounter day to day. It doesn't become such a scary concept. Because some people are deterred, because you can have parents who are like, "Oh, I don't like numbers," and then that also just automatically shuts it down for the child. But it helps when you can have someone go like, there is this big world where you find an accounting firm, but you do encounter the numbers day to day. How can you interact and then sort of work the way up into a point where if someone is really keen and studying it further, they believe they've got the tools and that base knowledge, or they're just able to apply it, whether it's for a job, whether they want to set up a business. So I find it very rewarding when you can see their faces light up and they're telling me, oh, I went to the ATM and then I saw the word debit, saw the word credit, and they know what it means. And then I think another level I wanted to show was, especially being a Black woman, was there are times when people are not exposed to someone else like them in certain spaces. So then I remember going for an audit meeting, a board meeting at the university. I got in the taxi, and the man said, "So are you studying nursing or social care?" And then I said, "Why would you ask?" And he said, "Of course, African lady, nursing or social care." And that sometimes is representative of some of the options people think we have. And I'm like, no, I am going to make strategic decisions about the courses at the university. That's what I'm going to do. So showing up and being a person who represents, like I said about the mentors, where a mentor who looks like you're doing the things you do, it really makes it quite possible and within reach. So I love the work I do. I love the young people. They keep me young. I always have to show up energetically and looking bubbly, and of course with color. I told you I love my color. But it's quite a two-way rewarding process. I get to give to them, and seeing them and their world expanding, it gives back to me, and I love it.
No, it's so important, because I find, with obviously the young ones, unless you really talk to them and open up, sometimes they haven't really got that guidance in terms of, if you're not used to dealing with them like that, sometimes the parents don't even know where to begin or how to start to have this conversation and sort of open up. But it's almost seems to be, we've got the work on the young ones, but we've equally got work on us, the parents, because with certain mindsets, sometimes I had a conversation with somebody, and it was around apprenticeships and stuff like that. And it's really interesting that some people absolutely love them, but whereas you've got other people that think, oh no, that means your life is dead if you do an apprenticeship. And I'm thinking, no, there's actually nothing wrong, because then they learn people skills, they learn on the job, they're developing a lot more than if they're away. And that way, when I said that, it was almost like, oh yeah, I never thought of it like that. But it's kind of like you've just got the side, and you know the other side, and you just think, yeah, this is the best thing, which is really, really difficult. And the whole stereotyping thing, that's I had that in myself when I moved, because again, it was everybody's in nursing, social work and stuff. I went into dentistry, so I went into something else, and it's like, oh, so who do you think you are? Because everybody else does this, and you think you can be different, but it's like, yeah, I am different. I'm not the same person, so so it's absolutely fine to be different, and you pick up and you learn, which is such an important aspect to have. But what would you say has been the most sort of helpful sort of mindset shift or strategy that you've used yourself, really, to get you to where you are today?
I think it would be allowing the fluidity of life. Because I think even at the beginning where I said, I remember the times when I had to tell myself, there's a version of me who was a mother, who was a young lady without children. There was a version of me as young mother of one, young mother of two, the one who didn't have all these extra things. It's allowing life and its processes to be fluid and allow yourself to take different shapes and forms. Because I think sometimes we get so hung up on the script, and it's like, oh, the script has deviated because life happens. We lose family, relationships can go south, and allowing yourself to be fluid, to redefine your shape in a certain season. Like I mentioned, I've got two young children, and then I've got the board, and I've got my 9 to 5 that I do, and the extra work I do with the children. Other opportunities present themselves, and I'm like, I was looking for such and such, but I'm like, at this moment, I cannot accommodate it. And I need to believe there shall be a time and season where that can be part and parcel of my life. But at this moment, this container is full. So it's allowing that fluidity of taking various forms and shapes and still believing that even where you are, it still would work. I think that's been the one key thing for my story, to just allow myself not to be like, oh, I've lost it. No, it's just not at this moment the container. If I find myself with a bigger container, I could absorb that. But for now, I'm full. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. And thank you so much for sharing all those insights, and almost like, a lot of nuggets, a lot of things for people to think about and consider, really, when they're in similar situations or think everything is falling apart. So thank you so much.
Thank you, likewise. And thank you for this platform and all the work that you do, and giving moms a space and allowing us to be both mom and CEO, and to celebrate that and to inspire and motivate. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. And, with regards to, obviously, you do quite a lot of things. Where can people connect with you?
I think LinkedIn would be the best place to connect with me. I've mentioned I'm on Women in Enterprise. There, I've got my profile listed there as well, where my email. But I think LinkedIn would be the best place to contact me. I've not yet set up a company where I do this. I'm still working with Worktree. So if anyone as well is interested in having that access to speak and shape young people's lives, I'd be happy to connect you and contact. yeah, and you can contact me with regards to that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.